Okay, we are back. Welcome, everybody. The next, see here, next item on our agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. Who do we have joining us today, Dr. Anderson?
Oh, we are so excited. We're going to turn it over to our principal from Scott to introduce our student. We know that Scott is the Grand Prize Magna Award winner, which is why we invited a student from Scott. Mrs. Dr. Mejia, would you like to introduce our student and then turn it over to them for the pledge? And I am so, my apologies. And I think I'm going to turn it over to Topeka West. I'm so sorry, Dr. Dadash.
Good evening, and thank you for having us here tonight. Our student is our great senior, Brenna Mays. Brenna, are you here?
I am.
All right, please lead us off.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much, Ms. Mays. And I made the mistake because you are our senior of the month tonight, and I believe your mother is a staff member. Am I correct?
Yes.
This is particularly exciting for both our staff at Landon as well as for you at Topeka West. I'm going to turn it over to our board now. Remember, she's senior of the month, so you're going to get a chance to ask her questions. Let's pull her certificate up if we can to show her certificate. You'll have two that'll be delivered after spring break. But we're going to go ahead and show you that certificate and then turn it over to the school board. All right, Mr. Munoz, I'll turn it over to you at this time, and then we'll show the certificates at the very end.
Thank you very much. Well, Brianna, please just tell us a little bit about yourself, and then I'll open it up to questions from my colleagues.
So I am a senior at Topeka West, as they told you. I am an athlete. I play 3 sports, both volleyball, basketball, and softball. I've been on the honor roll all 4 years. I've been involved in band. I've been involved in student council, among many other things.
Well, it sounds amazing. It sounds well received, and you certainly deserve a recognition like this as Student of the Month. Let me open it up to my colleagues to see if they have more questions for our Student of the Month. And if you want to raise your hand so that I can see you, here we go. Dr. Schumacher.
Yeah, Brenna, welcome. What plans are in store after this year, after you finish your senior year?
So my plans are to start at Wichita State University in the fall on a PT track. So my goal is to graduate at the end of the doctorate program of physical therapy at Wichita State.
That's fantastic. Congratulations.
Now, I'll remind board members that you're going to get like 5 or 10 minutes with her when we do her Senior of the Month video. So you're going to see her again under highlights. This is just the Pledge of Allegiance. We wanted her to lead us off. Our Scott student will be also talking in a little bit. So my apologies for that confusion earlier. But I'll turn it back over to Mr. Munoz. Then here's her certificate as well. Ms. Mays, your certificate, it's so funny when we're on Zoom because we're still kind of getting choreographed, kind of what to bring up when. That certificate, one more time, says Topeka Public School District recognizes Brenna Mays for service at the March 10th board meeting for presenting the Pledge of Allegiance. And again, we are so proud of you. We'll be talking to you again in a little bit. I'll turn it back over to Mr. Munoz.
Thank you, Dr. Anderson. She's right. We'll have plenty of time for more questions later on. But first off, after Pledge of Allegiance, our next item on the agenda is the adoption of the agenda. So I am looking for a motion.
Mr. President, I move the board approve the agenda as presented.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Mr. Tatum is a second. Ms. Lister, if you could call the vote.
The vote is open. Dr. Bonebrake by hand. Thank you. Mr. Tatum by hand. See Mr. Tatum.
Yeah, Mr. Tatum has voted by hand. Mrs. Lister?
Okay, thank you. The vote is in and the motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Lister. Next item on our agenda after the adoption of the agenda is the school highlights. I'll turn it back over to Dr. Anderson.
Oh, we're so excited. Okay, now we're going to go back to Miss Mays, our senior of the month. We're going to first show a video, so please enjoy the video. This is the first time she gets a chance to see the video, and then we'll turn it over to questions. And then we have our Scott student, and Dr. Mejia will be introducing them to start us off with Read Across America.
Hi, my name is Brenna Mays, and I'm a senior here at Topeka West. I'm a part of quite a bit. I've done a lot of athletic stuff, and then I've also been in the band, and then I'm a part of Spirit Club. I'm also Executive Vice President of the Stuco, and I also have done a lot of stuff through the Gifted program.
It has been so much fun. She's just a natural leader. It just comes natural, and it just kind of beams and radiates out of her. She loves interacting with those around her, pushing her teams, the activities that she's involved with as far as she can to achieve the best that they can be.
So Brenna was the recipient of the Gore Scholarship. It was a $64,000 scholarship at Wichita State University. When you get that news, I mean, there's that sense of pride. You know, you want to share the news, you want to be there for the family, for her, to celebrate that.
Back in November, almost 500 of us went to the campus that day. And then after that, it's just kind of been them narrowing it down to get down to a smaller group of people until they got to the finalist round, which was 14 people. And I was one of the 14, which we went back for our interview with the committee, which is when they chose the 3 of us.
Now, I knew she would get it though, because I just knew Brenna. And I just knew when they met Brenna, they would see what I've seen all along. I mean, I have seen her as a freshman, and I've seen her confidence grow and her leadership grow, and just the whole package come together.
Oh, my mom was crying. It was a lot of weight off of our shoulders to be able to know that I'll be financially secure. I'll either major in exercise science or health science. I've always wanted to help this community and become a physical therapist here.
Advice that I would have for her going forward is something that she's heard me say many times. Sky is your limit, and she shines bright.
Well, my advice for her is to every student, just never sell yourself short. This is the best time of your life to take those calculated risks and just explore the world.
Definitely keep your head up. There are going to be obstacles. No high school career for anyone is easy, and it's really what you take from them and what you learn from each obstacle, making sure that you keep your head up and are confident in yourself to continue on.
I'll turn this, we're going to show the certificate. You are just amazing. I mean, hearing your staff, the staff talk about you and just your comments are just fantastic. Okay, we're going to bring up the certificate. As we bring up the certificate, and we're trying to choreograph this at the right time, we just want to say, you know, the first senior of the month and the last senior of the month are two of the bookends that are most important, because this is the last time Topeka West can pick the senior of the month. You were the last one for this year. So it just shows how amazing you are to be the person that out of all of their seniors, you are the person that shines brightest into the top. Brenna Mays, March Senior of the Month, March 10, 2022. We recognize you and we congratulate you. Do you want to introduce your mom? I'm sure Miss BJ is in the room somewhere. Is she around somewhere?
Yes, both my mom and dad are on a Zoom also.
Do you want to introduce and share who their names are so we put that out there in the universe here?
So my mom is BJ Mays and my dad is Brian Mays.
Thank you for all that you do in support of Topeka West, but in support of Brenna. She is exceptional, as you already know. I'll turn this over to Mr. Munoz and the rest of our board.
Thank you, Dr. Anderson. To the parents, Mr. and Miss Mays, I just want to, any advice for us on how to support young people to be as successful as they can be?
Being involved. she's done everything, and we've been able to support that. We haven't had to say no to her, which is nice because she's gotten to figure out what it is that she likes the best. So we're just super proud.
And Dad, any advice for us?
Yeah, I'd say that it's one of those things. It takes a village to raise a child, to raise your kids, because you can't do it alone. You don't know everything. I mean, from her friends, her teachers, her administrative teachers or administrative people, from our faith community. I mean, and as well as ourselves. So it takes a village to make that work.
Well, congratulations, and Brenna, congratulations to you as well. Other questions from my colleagues for our Senior of the Month today. Mr. Tatum.
Oh, we can't hear Mr. Tatum, so you might have to log out and log back in because you are off mute. I see Ms. Schmidt has her hand up. So Mr. Tatum, if you log out, log back in, that might work. It might help it out a little bit.
And while we're waiting for Mr. Tatum, Ms. Schmidt, do you want to go ahead with your question?
Yes, Brenna, what an outstanding feat. You've accomplished some amazing things. My question to you is, when you look back at your Topeka Public Schools education over the years, what is one thing that you will take away with you?
I'll take a lot of things away from Topeka Public Schools, whether that be the friends that I've made or the lessons that I've learned. But one thing that I'll definitely take away is how to work with people and how to be around people that are different, because Topeka Public Schools isn't made up of one perfect stereotype of a student, and being able to work with everyone at any given moment is something that I've learned throughout my time.
I love to hear that. Good luck with your future endeavors.
Thank you.
Let's go back to Mr. Tatum.
Thank you. I think you guys can probably hear me now. I switched to a different microphone, however that works in the system. As I was starting to say, Brenna, congratulations. I hope you're very proud of what you have accomplished. This is a big deal, and you've got a lot of really great things ahead of you. You mentioned that you wanted to be a physical therapist and use your skills here in the community. Would that include right here in the Topeka School District? Fantastic.
It very well could be, yeah. It would be something that I would like to do, to be around the Topeka community, and whether that's seeing athletes from the community or students in general.
Fantastic. Well, I have no doubt you will accomplish whatever you set your mind to. Congratulations again.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Yeah, it's Bondrake.
Yes, Mr. Dr. Bondrake.
I would like to see you consider medical school, orthopedic surgery, lots of rehab there. Don't sell yourself short. You never have. Sky's the limit for you.
Thank you.
All right. Anything else?
Yes, I had a question. Congratulations. We're so proud of you. My question is, if you had to pick like just one of your favorite memories in your time with Topeka Public Schools, what's one thing that pops into your mind?
Well, I've got a lot of memories with Topeka Public Schools, but one thing that I remember that's popping into my head is last year for senior night basketball. I remember ending the game on a game-winning shot, which that was fantastic, and being able to celebrate that with my teammates. But after that, seeing the seniors walk across the floor and get recognized, and knowing that that was my last game at home, and the next time that would be happening, it was going to be me, was something that really hit home with me and made me recognize that every game was going to be short, and so was every season, and that it was going to come to an end faster than I realized.
Definitely. Ms. Bowley.
I wanted to say congratulations to the parents for having such a nice scholarship and all your daughter's hard work. That's pretty incredible. One of the questions I had was that TCALC in the background that so you took advantage of our TCALC program. Was that really useful for you to decide what your career would be?
It really has been. So I started in the sports medicine program this fall, and I already knew and had an idea that I would want physical therapy to be a big option for me, but seeing that and taking that class has definitely solidified that that would be a good career choice for me.
Well, it's really exciting. I mean, you're right there at the opening doors. So we wish you all the luck. And we're just so pleased that you are going to be a graduate of Topeka Public Schools. Congratulations to your whole family.
Awesome. And on that note, I'm going to turn it over back to Dr. Anderson for the second part of our school highlights.
Great, thank you. And again, congratulations, Ms. Mays. I do want to remind our board members that in addition to Ms. Mays, as a student being exceptional, Ms. BJ Mays is one of our top PE teachers at Landon Middle School. And so knowing that we both have staff and daughter just shining on the screen this evening, it really is a family that just has exceptional talent. And we are so blessed to have you in Topeka Public Schools. Right, so as we transition to our next highlight now is for Scott. While Mr. Gibson, our KNEAT president, will be sharing this stage with one of our students, and we picked someone from Scott because they are the Grand Prize Magna Award winner. So we've been highlighting them. We'll be highlighting them even more next month. But I'm going to ask Dr. Mejia, before we go into the proclamation, to just introduce her student and share what grade her student is in. So when we hear her student reading the proclamation, you know the age of our student and just a little bit about them. And so, Dr. Mejia, can you introduce Mr. Sanchez?
Absolutely. Alex Ibarra is the epitome of a gentleman. He is in 5th grade. He is one of the most responsible, mature, and outstanding scholars that we have at Scott, and we have so many of them. He is so responsible. He always wants to do well. He always wants to do what's right. You should have seen the excitement about this opportunity. So thank you for allowing him to do this because, I mean, he's prepared. He has taken it to heart. He needed to make sure that, you know, it being today, he's part of the after school program in our school, and that he would not be counted absent because I have 99% attendance, Dr. Mejia. I mean, and he's truly a gentleman, a great student, a great scholar, a kind person. I am just so proud of him. Hola, Alex.
Hola.
Can you open your camera, sweetheart?
Sí, espero.
Okay.
All right, so with that, and what grade is Mr. Sanchez in?
He's in 5th grade. It's Ibarra Sanchez, Dr. Anderson.
Oh, thank you. All right, Mr. Ibarra Sanchez, and Mr. Gibson, I'm not sure who's starting it and who's ending it, but we'll turn it over to this dynamic duo.
Okay. Whereas Topeka Public Schools stands firmly committed to promoting reading as the catalyst for our students' future academic success, their preparations for America's jobs of the future, and their ability to compete in global economy. And whereas Topeka Public Schools has provided significant leadership in the area of community involvement in the education of our youth, grounded in principle that educational investment is key. Community's well-being and long-term quality of life. And
whereas Read Across America is a national celebration of reading on March 2nd, 2022, which promotes reading and adult involvement in the education of our community students. And now, therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Education of Unified School District number 501, Topeka, Kansas, does proclaim March 2nd, 2022 as Read Across America Day.
Thank you, Mr. Gibson, our KNEAT president, as well as Mr. Ibarra Sanchez. I'm going to turn it over to the board if you have questions for our student or our staff member as we celebrate Read Across America, or from Dr. Mejia, as we also will be acknowledging her for the Magna Award in the coming weeks.
Yes, so questions from colleagues for Mr. Ibarra Sanchez.
Yeah, I have one, Mr. Ibarra Sanchez. ¿Prefieres leer en español? Oh, do you prefer to read in English or the same?
The same.
Igual, okay.
Don't be shy, Alex. Don't be shy.
All right, follow up then. Is there a certain book? Do you have a favorite book that you like to read?
Yes, it's Dogman, I believe.
Oh, yeah, I know that one. That's a good one. Thank you. Gracias.
Dogman and Capoeira are certainly great books. Yeah. So Alex, tell us a little bit about yourself. What do you most like about school, and who are your favorite teachers there?
Well, my favorite subject in school is math, science, and estudios sociales. Is because I learned more in there. They teach me how to like acknowledge what happens in the past, the future, and the present.
Well, that sounds awesome. God has a lot of amazing teachers there, and we're so happy to see that you're. Now, do you know where you're going to be going on next year in middle school?
Yes, Landon Middle School.
All right. Well, so you're going to be part of the second, that next phase of our dual language program that continues at Landon. We're so proud. Other questions from my colleagues for either Mr. Ibarra Sanchez or Dr. Mejia? Yes, Ms. Bowley.
I would just like to know, Alex, what are you planning on doing when you graduate from high school? Do you have any idea yet?
No, ma'am, but I will figure it out soon enough.
It's always good to set goals, so I'm glad to hear that. Congratulations on being the person chosen to read the proclamation tonight. You're pretty awesome.
Thank you.
And Dr. Mejia, I think it's also really important to point out that this esteemed award and recognition for the work that you do there at Scott Dual Language and national recognition that we have. I think it's something we're all very proud of. And obviously this program is headed by you. So congratulations to you and your staff.
Thank you.
Do you want to have anything
President
that you want to
Munoz.
share with us?
I just want to share that it is truly an honor and a privilege and a really exciting recognition of the work that our staff and our scholars do day in and day out. I see it every day how our staff pours their heart into their work, their commitment, their love for what they do, and the love for our students. The care that they provide is unlike any other. And just the community that we have at Scott is truly like a family. And without any of them, every single one of them counts. So I am really proud because this is a team effort. And it's something that we're very passionate about, that we believe in, that we wholeheartedly support and continue to work hard to provide opportunities and remove barriers for our scholars who are in minority groups or possibly underserved, and then enrichment opportunities for those others who are not in those groups. So thank you. It's an honor and a privilege.
Well, again, congratulations. We're awfully proud of you, and this recognition is coming in April. Is that right?
Yes, sir. It's coming
all right.
up. I actually fly out on my 50th birthday.
Well, happy early birthday to you.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Alex or for Dr. Mejia before we move on? Okay, let me go ahead and turn it back on. Dr. Anderson, any other school highlights?
Those are really all of our highlights. And so with those highlights, we normally don't give a certificate for proclamation, but Mr. Barra Sanchez, you have a certificate coming your way. You did such an excellent job. Normally the KNEAT kind of reads that whole piece, and as he kind of traded off with you and allowed you to start that piece, we thank you, Mr. Gibson with KNEAT. For just sharing this piece so the student's voice comes through. One of the items for the Magna Award for us to remember, they won the award because their scores academically in reading and in math, but particularly in reading, have shown that dual language students outperform most students on any standardized test in those content areas in particular. So we're just proud of them. Later in April, you'll hear from Dr. Mejia and Dr. Kipp about their award, and you'll see the video that the National School Board Association flew in to tape last week. So you'll be hearing from them again later in April. Those are all of our highlights.
Thank you so much for everyone and to you, Dr. Anderson. Next item on our agenda after school highlights is public communication. Ms. Lister, do we have any public communication?
Mr. President, we do not.
All right, thank you very much. After that, next item number 7, business by consent. Is there a motion?
So moved, Mr. President.
Mr. President, I move the
Yes.
board approve the items of business by consent as presented and authorize the board president or superintendent to sign the special projects and purchasing contracts for and on behalf of our board.
Okay, thank you very much. And
I will second.
all right,
Mr.
thank you,
President.
Mr. Tatum. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Can we go ahead and take the vote?
The vote is open. Mr. Tatum, show of hands. Okay, thank you. All votes are in and the motion carries unanimously.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Lister. All right, moving on, we are moving to our superintendent's report. Dr. Anderson.
One of the things we often do is to talk about the COVID numbers. And while we don't have COVID update on here, it's under superintendent's update. Very quickly, we just want to remind parents that the COVID numbers have changed in terms of how it's reported. Therefore, it looks slightly different. We're going to go to that screen. If you are a parent watching right now, if you go to the parent resource link, we're going to go to our website on our screen, and we're going to show you where that is. Under the parent resource link, we're going to click on parent resources. It's going to take you to the page that you've always gone to, but it does look different. There isn't a glitch. It's different because the county has changed how they report it. And so instead of seeing a picture, you see this, what we're looking at now. So we're going to put in the state of Kansas. We're going to put in the county of Shawnee County, and it's going to tell us what the current level is. Because the level is so low, I would ask that the board understand that we probably won't be doing this at every meeting anymore. When it's red or very high, perhaps that might be something you may want to know then. Right now it's at a medium level. This is what you will receive. You will not receive a picture, but the county now has a reporting of 3 levels, which we talked about at the last board meeting. And now you see what that looks like. If you want to know what we look like, we still do have that scorecard. We had 1 staff member last week that was positive and 14 students. So 0.1% of our student population and less than that for our staff population. So we're excited to go into spring break knowing that we have such a low spread of COVID. We're going to take that on off the screen now that people know now how to access that and what that looks like.
There are no clusters. There are no clusters.
No clusters. We only have 1 staff member and 14 students in the district. So no, sir, no clusters. Thank you for asking. With that, we're going to go straight to our school boundaries feedback, unless there are other questions regarding the COVID numbers and the adjustment. All right, we're going to go straight to the school boundaries feedback. Based on the feedback from the last meeting, we also received some feedback, and we're going to pull that up for you. We also received feedback in general regarding the boundaries. You may remember that the boundary map showed the boundaries really shown in 5 sections in terms of the 5 different schools people could choose from. And then from that, the board members asked some questions and gave feedback, and we left this open for a couple of weeks. And what we have continued to gain information on is just a desire, if we could keep those neighborhood associations as 1 unit, if we could keep the identity of the community by just maybe having 2 schools that students will go to. And from the board meeting, many parents then began to put in their requests of what school they wanted to go to. So either individuals put in the request to return back to the school they were being bused in from, or many of them put in the request for Jar9. So that caused us to relook at the map and make the appropriate adjustment. We're going to leave the map as it is and not change the shape any longer, and then turn it over to Dr. Kipp to share those 2 schools and what this now does. Dr. Kipp, and then we're not asking the board to vote tonight. We're going to share with you, answer questions, and then we'll leave this up for another 2 weeks. We'll come back to you at the next board meeting to vote on based on this revision after the incorporating the feedback. Dr. Kipp?
Yes, thank you. This is kind of like Dr. Anderson mentioned, kind of a modified version of what we talked about last time, but this one only involves two boundary changes, essentially. Just to review, the black line that you're seeing is the current boundary of Stout, which was voted on to close, and so we have to absorb that boundary in some fashion. Before, when I first presented this, I had 4 schools being absorbed into Stout area. And so now it's more efficient and certainly keeps that those neighborhoods intact, more intact, just involving 2 elementary boundaries. And that top one would be Randolph. That would absorb kind of the northerly part of Stout. And Jardine Elementary would extend northerly to cover the southern part of Stout.
Are there questions for Dr. Kipp about those two, the split between the 2 schools? Not seeing any questions. We'll turn this back to the full board picture. And we will again bring this back in 2 weeks and ask for the board to vote on it at that time. And we thank everyone for giving their feedback and just showing that the feedback really does matter, and that helps us determine what things look like moving forward.
Dr. Anderson, I think we have a question from Ms. Boley.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir.
Actually, it's just a statement. I want to thank you for hearing our voices from the last map. And I really appreciate seeing our students being more contained in their own neighborhoods, because that's where relationships are made. So appreciate Dr. Kipp for finding another solution for the board and for our superintendent and parents. And we appreciate that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Ms. Boley. All right, not seeing any other questions. We're going to move to the next item. We have 2 items under superintendent's update. One thing I skipped over, just so we leave enough time for legislative update. I skipped over the code of ethics. Remember, every board meeting, we're turning it over to our board president and vice president to go over the list of 10 items. You went through the first 3, and I think tonight they're going through the next 2. But if it's okay, we'll come back to that superintendent's update last and turn it over for the president and vice president to go over that. We're going to turn it over to the legislative update. We have with us our lobbyist. Some of you may not have met the lobbyist yet. Jennifer Crow, she's online with us, and she's a brief PowerPoint, but this is really for discussion for the board to really see what some of the current items are. As we have her PowerPoint, we also have a reminder. Mr. Gowan, can you bring up the reminder of the One Voice legislative platform? If you're new to the board agenda, you might not have seen this. We turn this in around November, and every year I'm going to be bringing this back to you around November, December. We present this to the county, the legislative group, and the county board presidents and the county superintendents come together, and the superintendents really look at this agenda and this platform. So currently under our legislative positions, school funding is one, teacher recruitment is the other, access to technology, social emotional health and our beliefs in increasing that support, and then making sure that we also listed our overall constitutional responsibilities. And we've made a statement that we do not support CRT in this particular legislative platform, was another addition that we made this year. So now we'll go to the PowerPoint. And in that PowerPoint, on that very first screen, we just want to highlight there are some things currently, some bills, as we take this off the screen and put the PowerPoint on the screen. There are some bills that really support our current initiatives, either the legislative platform or it supports our current initiatives within our strategic plan. The following bills support those, and then I'll turn it over to Ms. Crow to introduce some other areas of opportunity or discussion that you might want to have. The first bill that I just want to point out to you, both House Bill 2593 and 2639, they really are focused on improving the working after retirement rules. You know, right now we have to wait a certain amount of time before teachers or retirees can come back to schools and work. So there is a proposal to adjust that, especially as we're dealing with the teacher shortage. We're excited about that. House Bill 2626 increases funding for teacher service scholarships. House Bill 2512 increases funding for virtual school students and changes the way we calculate graduation rates. Now, keep in mind that virtual school, pre-K through 12 or kindergarten through 12, Topeka Public Schools is only one of 12 schools in the state that has a K through 12 program. So the increased funding would be certainly advantageous. Senate Bill 499 it provides a second count date for virtual school students. Again, it assists us in that area. And then House Bill 2631 restores funding for tests for CTE credentials. And as you know, with TCALC and CTE being in every high school, all of those would be of support, and any comments regarding individuals supporting those on the legislative end would be most advantageous. So now I'll turn it over to Ms. Crow to introduce herself and to jump into the rest of this PowerPoint.
Good evening, Jennifer Crow. Thank you all for having me. It was really a pleasure to see the student accomplishments. I'm hoping we have some future candidates for public office. I will start with, and thanks Dr. Anderson for going through the first few bills. I'll start with probably the most important, most controversial bill that is in front of the legislature. It is House Bill 2662. It's the Parent Bill of Rights and Academic Transparency Act. And the first section of this bill would give parents the rights to, one, direct the education and care of their child. And that is already addressed in current law. KSA 38141 says that it shall be the public policy of this state that parents shall retain the fundamental right to exercise primary control over the care and upbringing of their children in their charge. It is further the public policy of this state that children shall have the right to protection from abuse and neglect. Nothing in subsection B shall be interpreted to expand, diminish, or in any way alter the scope of rights of parents or children to the extent such rights exist as of the effective date of this act. A parent can bring a cause of action in state court or in any court that applies to the claims arising under those principles in section B. And any person authorized by law to act on behalf of the child can also maintain a cause of action in the name of that child. So what is kind of new in this bill is that the school districts have to establish parent transparency portals. And I know the district has a lot of this stuff available online, but this would be a new portal that the district would need to establish. That would be open to the general public. On materials that are used, parents would be able to review library materials that would be accessible through the parent transparency portal. And the other thing that would happen with the 2662 is that it would prohibit schools for non-renewal of teacher contracts for refusing to teach against their beliefs or practices. They did pass an amendment to this bill. There was a lot of confusion and concern that lesson plans would have to be posted. The amendment says that those do not have to be posted. This bill has passed the K-12 Budget Committee in the House, has not been considered by the full House. It will likely be amended into the K-12 budget bill. So on the House side, there's a new practice where they put policy pieces in with the budget funding component. And typically you do not have policy bills in a budget bill, but this is something that has been a new practice for probably the last 4 years. It also makes it difficult for these items to be vetoed because they're all contained in one bill. And so you'd have to veto the budget in order to veto any component that is policy. And I think that's kind of the reason for putting the policy into the budget so that the governor cannot veto any of the policy pieces or the bills if they were on their own. And the fact that she would have concern with obviously vetoing the K-12 budget.
Ms. Crow, can we open this up to the board? And we also have the Senate bills and the Transparency Acts, and so much is in there. And you mentioned that it's, has a hearing this week. And so we pulled up that slide for you. We'll turn it over to the board if you have questions regarding that bill before she goes to the next one.
Yeah, I have a question. Ms. Crow, first off, thank you for all of your work. I appreciate you. I know that oftentimes when there are bills that are going through, that there is an attached estimate of the cost of the bill. Has there been any estimates on what that cost will be?
I do not know. I can get that to you on the fiscal notes. And
Yes.
I would not, the fiscal notes delineate the cost to the state. So it would not have a big fiscal note because the cost would be borne by either KSDE or by the district.
Thank you. Are there other questions?
The governor does not have a line item veto.
You know, that has been, there is a constitutional rule that it's called the two subject rule, that in the budget, you are not supposed to have policy components. There are provisos that last for a year. So this practice to separate the education budget from the general budget is new. And I mean, a case could be made that you could make line item vetoes within this budget bill, but she has not made that argument to this point. It could be something that she could bring up this year, but the last few years that they have kept this practice going, she has not tried to line item this budget bill.
That answers my question too. Thank you.
Teachers are, of course, the enemy, and they're constantly under attack, but education should not be political. This is ridiculous.
I have a question, Mrs. Bowley here. Mr. President?
I'm sorry, go ahead, Ms. Bowley. Go ahead.
So I understand that this has been passed out of the committee, it's been passed out of the House, it now goes to the Senate.
This has not been passed out of the full House. It has just been passed.
Okay, I misunderstood. So there is some still negotiating room around the removing of teachers for teaching.
There could be. That's one of the main components for the bill. So, but the House K-12 Budget Committee tends to be a little more active on issues like that than the Senate Education Committee. So in conference, some of these components could come out. And yeah, I guess that's, and the Senate has not taken up material like that in any of the bills that they've been looking at.
Thank you.
And that's something else I might also say on the budget issue. We have a House Education Committee and a Senate Education Committee, and then we have a House K-12 subcommittee, essentially, to the Appropriations Committee. So it is also a new practice where the House Education Committee really does not take up any bills. And the House K-12 Budget Committee takes up both the budget and the policy so that they could put it together in the budget. So there's been a shift away from the base House Education Committee to the Budget Committee for all of these policy items. The Senate remains the same, with the Senate Education Committee deliberating all of it.
You know, I think one of the hardest things for us is just to put aside our own personal, how we might feel about it, and just put ourselves in the mindset as a school board and think about its impact. Dr. Anderson or Mr. I wonder if you might sort of speak to the impact of this as potential legislation, both in terms of the portal, the transparency portal, and as well as the implications for teachers and how complicated it is for us to have to let somebody go.
Well, and with this, and I'll ask for Ms. Whiteman, who is well versed in legislation and actually has been monitoring it, to speak to this a little bit in terms of, from a legal perspective, what some of the issues are. I will share in terms of transparency, some things we're already doing from a curriculum and teaching material side in terms of posting material. Teachers normally write their lesson plans in a Google listserv area, and but they don't normally all individually post them in the same manner. But some of these things, some of this information is collected and posted and available. With that in mind, given the other pieces that you now see on here, Ms. Whiteman, would you like to speak to potential issues with this particular bill?
Certainly, Dr. Anderson. I provided about a 6-page summary, which is a little bit into the weeds on this, about parts that may be or need to be amended if this starts moving. And Ms. Crow is absolutely correct that the practice now is to send everything through the House K-12 Education Committee. They deal with the policy bills first and get those out, and then they deal with the budget. But their game plan is once a bill moves out of a House committee, then it basically can be added to a conference committee without even going to the Senate. So it's a way around being what I would call transparent with the public and having a bill and major policy decisions debated in both the House and the Senate and voted on by both the House and the Senate. But Section 4 of this bill relating to teachers only deals with teacher evaluations. And it basically says that no teacher can be negatively evaluated or have their contract non-renewed based on their refusal to teach through critical pedagogy philosophies or against such persons' sincerely held religious beliefs. But the expectation that has been set forth in case law, litigated cases, is that the Board of Education hires teachers to teach the curriculum, not to interject their personal opinions or religious beliefs. So this section could certainly be deleted and not change the current expectations. But the two parts that are very difficult are the ones that basically that parent transparency portal, and the fact that the district is going to be required to post on a yearly basis and keep updated any of the curriculum material used in a classroom. Now, they have said specifically, and the language does exempt their individual lesson plans, but the other language goes on to state that if anything that's presented in a classroom on a daily basis would need to be on that portal. So what we're going to take is time away from teachers who are going to have to post, let's say, and for example, I was a 7th, 8th grade social studies teacher. I frequently and every day in social studies would bring in current events because we want students to read the news. It's important. Reading the newspaper is a good way to teach literacy. But under this law, I would be required every day to post the articles that I would be presenting to the students in the class in that transparency portal. So for many districts, it will require additional personnel to do that because technology takes someone who's focused on getting that done. And this language in this bill is at the building level. So each of your school buildings in 501 would have to do this on a daily basis. Again, it's going to take time and effort away from student achievement and instruction to basically do a compliance. I think the argument is that parents already can access the teacher. All they have to do is call the principal and the teacher, and any information that's presented can be provided to the parent. Additionally, it's posted on the web page and KSDE. So that is one of the bigger points. Plus, it allows, what's unusual about this bill, and we're seeing a trend, it allows a cause of action against the district. And if the parent prevails, then basically they would have to, there would be attorney's fees and costs assessed against the district. So there are several sections that are very problematic. The other one is that the district is going to have to go through every textbook that you have and determine if there's any unacceptable language that would be harmful to students. And if so, then the district's going to have to list all of their textbooks and library materials online and then post whether it's recommended that the parents look at this document. So again, it's going to take much time and effort from our classroom teachers and other staff to do these postings, time and effort, and additional technology. So very time consuming. And the big issue is that it detracts from the instruction that's actually happening in the classroom and supporting the teachers presenting the instruction per the curriculum that's been already adopted by KSDE. But if there are any questions about the 6-page summary, I'd be happy to answer any questions. I have put in the summary some issues that I recommend be deleted, and then some that are already in current law. So this language in this bill would be redundant. As Ms. Crow said, current law under 38-141 basically states that parents retain and have all the rights, parental rights, to direct the upbringing of their children. And that would include education decisions, which school boards across the state already contain those policies in the school board manual.
Thank you, Ms. Whiteman. With that overview of the various issues, we do have a few more bills to show. What we will do is forward you at your tables the summary that she's referenced, and it's a document that's about 10 pages. It's at your tables. I'm forwarding it to you now to make sure that, and Mrs. Lister may have already emailed it to you, but just to make sure that's at the top of your email, because it goes into even greater depth in this PowerPoint of the things that she just mentioned, just to have that on the uppermost part of your mind. We're going to go through the other bills, and then one of the things when you speak to a bill or disagree or want to support it, and I'll lean on Ms. Whiteman a little bit, we'll give some guidance about how do you do that as an individual person speaking in support or against the bill, and then how do you do that as a board. The remaining bills, Ms. Crow?
We need to go back one slide to 363. There we go. Senate Bill 63 and Senate Bill 93 are on the Senate side. They're in the Senate Education Committee and have a hearing. These are transparency bills and require the posting of all teaching materials. A lot different than what we saw in the House. What you would have to do is publish the instruction materials, and activities on the internet. What's different about Senate Bill 393, same language, but has a penalty that would be imposed if the transparency measures are not followed. Senate Bill 484 had a hearing this week. It is setting rules about transgender women in sports. That is in the Senate Education Committee. Over 100 pieces of testimony were offered on this bill. It's called the Fairness in Women's Sports Act. And this is a bill that was vetoed by the governor last year. Senate Bill 455 is the Open Borders Bill. This is enrollment of non-resident students, has been heard by Senate Education. They have, the chair, Baumgardner, has directed parties to find some sort of compromise on this bill, but the bill will still be worked sometime next week. And that bill is similar to 2615 on the House side, which is also open enrollment. It is alternative educational opportunities. It establishes educational savings accounts, or ESAs, which can be used for private schools and for other education costs outside of the public school. And that is one that will likely be added to the House Education Bill. We're pretty sure that one will be added. Senate Bill 41 had a hearing this week, yesterday. It is a bill that builds on a bill that was passed or that was debated last year. It has passed Senate Judiciary as of yesterday. Next, it'll be considered by the full Senate. Prohibits schools from discrimination based on COVID, prohibits schools from requiring face masks, requires schools to allow exemptions from vaccine mandates. And this again has the legal hatchet, implements a special process for hearings and appeal of school board actions on diseases, prohibits schools from denying access unless there are reasonable grounds to believe a person is actually infected with a disease. And as I said, would reinstate Senate Bill 40 from last session. This would be based on any school board actions on the issue. A parent or an employee can request a hearing before the school board within 72 hours. They can also appeal to district court. The court would be required to hold a hearing within 72 hours. And then in addition, any board action on infectious or contagious diseases would have to be reviewed every 30 days. And I talked about 2615, which has the open enrollment and the ESAs, the Student Empowerment Program. House Bill 2690 is a hit of about $50 million, 3.9 million for Topeka Public Schools. It's called the Every Child Can Read Act. The focus here is on third grade literacy. This is high density at risk. They would have it expire in fiscal year 2024. And in the meantime, that money would be directed to teacher bonuses in schools that do well on reading assessments. The awards would be capped on enrollment. So this would hit high density districts the hardest because they would lose more at-risk money than they would gain in teacher bonuses. House Bill 2662 was the Parents' Bill of Rights, and we talked about that. So that's what I have. There's a lot more too.
Open this back up to questions, and then we'll be leaning on Ms. Whiteman to give some advisement if you want to speak for or against legislation, how you do that individually as a member or collectively as the board. Additionally, if you want to speak about these items through social media, she'll give some guidance about that as well. But first, we'll turn it over to questions about any of these bills.
If you're elected to public office, does your IQ drop 50 points?
Ms. Crow, my question I have is, of all the bills that you share with us, what are those bills that you most have your focus on that deserves our attention in terms of its impact on us as a school district?
I would say 2662, as Donna went through, that's probably the biggest one. The loss of the high density at risk for the teacher bonuses, that's a major one. I think those are the main ones. Senate Bill 541 is a mega bill. That's the COVID bill that has the hearing process and puts a bunch of restrictions on schools as far as COVID. I could see that as being as being a big issue. It's kind of a big issue for everyone.
And Ms. Crow, didn't we discuss the bill in which funds could be impacted, whether, and maybe you spoke to that a little bit, not only the at-risk, but also private school ability in terms of that. Can you speak to what bill that is? Because we want to make sure that anything that impacts funding for Topeka Public Schools, that we recognize what those bills are.
Yeah, that is the Educational Savings Account, also known as the Student Empowerment Program. That's House Bill 2615. And that would be the other. So all of these have titles. 2615 is the Student Empowerment Program that has the open enrollment and the Educational Savings Account, which is a lot like vouchers. And then 2690 is the Every Child Can Read Act. And that takes the high density at risk and gives it to teacher bonuses and hits high density at risk schools the hardest. So those are the major 1 and 2 that will likely go into the K-12 budget bill and be sent to the full house. And then I guess as a third tier, 2662, which is the Parent Bill of Rights.
Well, thank you very much, Ms. Crow. Dr. Anderson, did you say that Ms. Whiteman was going to sort of share with us sort of some ways that and ways that we can and can't sort of approach this?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So I'll turn it over to Ms. Wyman, and then I see Mr. Tatum and Ms. Foley both had hands up regarding some specific bills. Is it okay for Ms. Wyman to go ahead and we'll start with that and then turn it back over to the board to continue dialogue?
That sounds
and
good.
In your email, you have the kind of highlighted areas in great depth that Ms. Whiteman provided. Ms. Whiteman, and we can tag team on this a little bit. When a board member individually wants to speak for or against the bill on any of these items, how might they do that individually, and how should that happen collectively as a board? And if any board member wants to communicate through social media in some fashion, what are the legal ways in which we can and cannot use district information, letterhead, logos, any of those things?
Certainly, the under Kansas law, as elected officials, the board speaks and takes action when at least 4 of the 7 board members vote to do something. So the Board of Education could take a position and draft letters to the legislature after they would discuss it in an open session, and then the board vote to send a letter to the Shawnee County Legislative Delegation expressing concerns about particularly bills. But for an individual board member, they certainly are advocates for public education, and we need as many advocates for public education. But if you're acting in your individual capacity outside of an official meeting, then you want to be careful to, let's say, the best, most effective way is to one-on-one talk to your legislative delegation. Be careful. You can reference that you are, based on your experience as a school board member, but you have to be careful that you are not speaking for the board unless the board has voted. So you would want to make sure, even in your individual, if you post things on social media, which I do not recommend elected school board members do, because for as many people as agree with you, there will be as many who disagree, and you are elected officials. So if you're going to act, I'd recommend you do it through official board action. I noted when I went back and looked at the history of House Bill 2662, there were several boards of education that submitted letters to the committee on this bill, but it was after the board had discussed and adopted a letter or received assistance drafting it. But you still, as an elected official, everyone always sees you as an elected official, even though you meet, two nights a month and have lots of school activities, involvement with your schools. Everyone will see you as a public official and not as an individual board member. So I always recommend that the elected officials be very careful. And if you post something on your personal media, please do not identify yourself as a school board member, because under board policy, only the president or only after a vote speaks for the board, and certainly don't put anything that would identify you with USD 501. You have a right to be a private citizen and voice your opinion, but my experience is that as soon as everyone knows that you're a school board member, so they will assume that you are acting and writing and posting on behalf of the board, and that's not correct, because the board speaks legally only when 4 members vote on an issue, or if it's a comment coming from the board president. No other board member has the authority to speak for the board, use the district's logo, and be very careful in identifying yourself as a board member, even on your private post, because that can work against you and the mission and goals of the district.
Thank you, Ms. Whiteman, and I'll turn it over to the board. Ms. Whiteman, in the past, and I'll just ask if this is, in the past, someone may say, are you a board member? Or they might say, I'm a board member, but I'm speaking independently as an individual of my own opinion. Is that, and as long as they're not using the logo and the letterhead and those things, is that sufficient?
That would be correct. And that's exactly, you always want to emphasize several times in the conversation, this is my personal opinion. I am not speaking on behalf of the board. So always make that clear at the beginning and at the end, because you do have, as an elected official, a private life and a personal opinion, but you cannot speak for the board unless the board has voted and taken action. So if you're talking to an individual legislator, if you decide to show up at a hearing, simply make that statement clear that you are not speaking on behalf of the board. You are speaking as a private citizen, and this is your opinion.
I have a question.
Yes.
Is it possible to get copies of these letters that other boards have written to their representatives?
Sure, we can get that for you and forward them to everyone.
I think that'd be a good idea, because I think maybe we as a board could come to some agreement. If we had them before, we could even make this an action item for next meeting to notify our representatives of our disgust at the slow destruction of public education.
Right. And the ones you want to always target from my past experience is local legislators listen to local constituents far more than they do from people outside their district. So making sure that you are talking to your local representatives and senators for sure. And then you could also send it on to the committees, the education committees in the House and the Senate, and then the K-12 budget committee.
Mr. Tatum, you have a question?
I do. Thank you, Mr. President. My question is for either Ms. Crow or Ms. Whiteman, and it concerns Senate Bill 515, which wasn't one of the ones that was mentioned in our discussion this evening. Do either one of you two know the status of SB 515? It concerns critical race theory, and we've already established that the 501 district does not support critical race theory, but there's some reporting requirements in SB 515 that could be pretty significant for us as a district to try to manage should this bill pass into law. That wasn't one of the bills that either of you mentioned. Anyone know what the status of that is currently?
Yeah, that was introduced in the Senate Tax Committee, so that makes it exempt from the rules, so it can still be alive in the second half of the session. However, it was referred to Senate Education Committee, not a peep. They are not going to work that bill.
Okay, thank you.
And I might add to what Donna said, our Senate Education Committee has all 3 members of the Topeka delegation: Kristen O'Shea, Rick Cluse, and Brenda Dietrich. So communicating with our Senate delegation is a large part of the Senate Education Committee.
Thank you, Ms. Crow. Ms. Bowley, did you have a question?
I did have a question for Ms. Whiteman. So earlier this year, I attended a Kansas Association of School Boards advocacy workshop, and helping us understand what bills we need to advocate for. So in that situation, how does that fall under the same things that you were telling us? Since we went to Kansas School Board Association to learn about that advocacy.
Yes, the KASB does have, and usually one board member on each board across the state would be sort of the legislative lead person and report back to their local board on legislative activities. So they hold that advocacy meeting for all school board members and administrators to help them become familiar with what are the big issues in the legislature. So generally a board member would take that information, go back to their local board, share that information with the local board, and then so the local board members are kept up to date on what's happening. And then the local board could determine if they want to take a position as an official position as a board on any particular legislation. So it would go back to that process of does the board, as Dr. Bonebrake mentioned, does the board want to address a letter to their local delegation or the House and Senate Education Committee or the K-12, so that the legislators can see that the entire board voted as being opposed to this bill or supporting this bill?
But I think that's an important question. But before we get to that question, does anyone have any other questions for Ms. Crow or Ms. Whiteman about some of these bills that have been discussed so far? Okay. All right. Seeing no questions, then, so the question I have, I guess, to you all as a board is, do you all feel like we want to write something as a 501 board to our representatives at the in the legislature?
Yes. Yes, an emphatic yes.
Yes.
I see two. I'd love to hear from everybody, you know, just where you are and get a consensus.
Bonebrake, yes.
Dr. Schumacher and then Ms. Bowley, go ahead.
Yeah, I would agree completely, and I appreciate the opportunity to try to do that as a whole board, at, both with Ms. Crow and Ms. Whiteman's guidance.
Ms. Bowley?
That's what I was going to say. I think particularly on ones that will affect our budget, our mill levies, anything that really affects the education of our children and the finances, crossing borders, that type of thing, I think would be very important for our board to discuss. I think some of the other things may be just individuals.
Ms. Schmidt, let me check in with you. Where are you feeling on this?
I have a little bit of conflicting feelings about it. I think everybody has the opportunity to definitely write their legislative members on their own accord as to where they stand. If we were going to do things as a board, I would want to do a lot of research and have a lot of discussion before we would present something as a board. Just because while we do create the policies in the framework for the school, we are elected voices for those who put us in office. So just something to consider.
Okay. All right. And yeah, I think that we are the biggest advocates for public education. And when there are anything in the legislature that impacts our school district, I think we should be a fairly loud voice in terms of impact and making sure our legislators know how children are affected at the day and age. So it sounds like most of us are on board in terms of writing something up. The question I think now is, how do we do we get to a point where we can all agree on a particular message? Ms. Crow or Ms. Whiteman, any ideas on how you all have sent us some info? Is that right?
Mr. Munoz, if I may offer and then ask Mrs. Whiteman to just kind of join in this. Ms. Crew often types up, testimony for us. Ms. Whiteman also provided some items. We mentioned many different bills this evening. Perhaps we propose some testimony, and I'll ask first actually Ms. Crow, since you are really the boots to the ground that submits this and writes information for us, is perhaps we, with Ms. Whiteman's help, to craft some testimony for the board and then share that with the board to give consideration to, in terms of a message that is just explains the impact just overall. Ms. Crow, does that sound reasonable to you, that we have the bills that Ms. Crow feels like, man, these are the most harmful, and then we craft a message around that? Ms. Crow, I'll turn it over to you to speak to that as a next step for the board.
Yes, I think that's a great idea. And is this something you would want to go to the delegation?
Where would you suggest this goes? And the bills, just reinforcing the bills that we might, the board might want to have a message surrounding, were the ones that you, I assume, highlighted that specifically address finances. So where would you suggest the letter go?
I think we should focus on the delegation. I think that's our best bet. And I don't think because I think that would give us the opportunity to also interact on these House bills with our 3 members of the Senate committee, which is a 9-member committee. So I think that would preempt those bills coming over to the Senate and get those thoughts in their head from the board.
And then Ms. Crow, is there a timeline? Of course, the board only meets every 2 weeks, so they won't meet again until the last week or so of March. Do you suggest crafting that prior to then, and then sending that to the board members, or I'll share that with the board members individually, or how might you, 2 weeks from now, would that be a satisfactory time for them to be able to review it and approve that?
That is going to be too late. We have first adjournment on April 1st. So Monday, they're possibly into Tuesday, be working the budget bill where these 3 bills will probably likely be inserted.
Okay. So then I'd like to ask Ms. Whiteman then, in that case, are you, and would you like to give us guidance in regards to Mrs. Crow typing up something for the board to give consideration to, and then may we share this with individual board members as the message, and if they have a concern, they speak directly with me? Ms. Whiteman, is that an approach absent of the, to get something out in the near future that would be satisfactory?
Certainly that would start the process. You may have to have a special meeting just to approve it if you want to have it as board action approving the letter. And it could be a short special meeting to do that.
And Ms. Whiteman, in the past, if the board has consensus that they'd like for something written, and then we'll talk about which bills it'll be written about, if they have consensus to allow administration, which we've submitted in the past, we submit hearing items, periodically. If they give that this evening, and then just by consensus agree to allowing us to take this step, are you comfortable then with us having Ms. Crow draft something, and then they can speak with me if they have any issues or want to suggest adjusted language as a next step?
Yes, if they would vote tonight to select maybe 1 or 2 bills or categories of bills, such as the finance, anything that would increase, the workload of teachers and detract from instruction, and give that direction to you to have Ms. Crow develop that, then I certainly that would be the best way to do that, so that it's a very, it would demonstrate that the board has acted and taken an official action to support or express concerns about specific bills.
Thank you. So therefore, Mr. Munoz, based on that direction, we'll just remind everyone the particular bills that were discussed, and we may pull that PowerPoint back up. And then Ms. Crow will just mention the ones that she feels like writing a letter would be advantageous to the delegation. And I believe there are 2 or 3. And then we'd like to open this up for there to be a vote on those 2 or 3 in terms of writing a letter allowing the lobbyist and the superintendent to proceed with the lobbyist crafting a letter on your behalf and sending that in, given she mentioned Monday and it's Thursday, being a tight time frame. So we're going to pull the PowerPoint. Would the PowerPoint be helpful, Ms. Crow, so that they can see what you're talking about?
Yes, and it's the slide with 2615, 2690, and 2662.
Thank you. All right, we're pulling that PowerPoint up now to show the slides with those particular bills. Thank you, Mr. Gowan, for doing that as we pull that PowerPoint back up. And as he does that, the very first 26 bill that you just referenced.
2615 is the student empowerment program that has the educational savings accounts and then also has the open borders language, the non-resident students. 2690 is the high density at risk bill that takes the high density at risk bill and puts it into teacher bonuses and then sunsets high density at risk in 2024. And then 2662 is the Parents' Bill of Rights, which Mrs. Wetman talked about. That's the transparency, the limitations on the classroom, legal options, a number of things.
So Mr. Munoz for 2615, 2690, and 2662 are those bills that the board, we would turn it over to you to see if there's a motion for a letter to be written by Ms. Crow and reviewed by me to, to send on in. And what I would do just for the board members to know that even though you give action to Ms. Crow, I'd still want to make sure that each member does see what that language is that's being sent in so that you are familiar with that, what she ends up writing. And then I'll work with the president. If there's some tweaking that needs to be done, you can give him feedback or me feedback.
Yeah, I think it's important that obviously we'll direct you here shortly to write that letter, but that all of us have a chance to be able to do our research and to give our feedback. That way, we all know that everybody's had an opportunity to share their thoughts before it goes to a final draft.
Here, here.
Okay, so we're looking for a motion. Is that right, Dr. Anderson? Where we're at?
Yes, sir.
From somebody here to, and I just reading from my notes here, looking for a motion to direct Ms. Crow and Dr. Anderson to write a letter regarding the impact of 2615, 2690, and 2662 to be shared with our delegation here.
So moved.
Has been a motion. Is there a second?
Yes.
Second.
Okay. Second, was that Ms. Stewart Campbell?
Sure.
All right, Ms. Lister, do you want to pull up the vote?
I can't do that because it is not an action item. This was
Okay.
So we'll have to vote by show of hands.
Just show of hands. Okay. So, all right, so I'll go ahead and have, if you are favor this motion, which has been seconded, I'll go ahead and raise your hand.
Okay.
Okay. All right, and all opposed? Okay, was that everybody?
Who is opposed?
I don't think there's anybody.
I'm going to abstain from this vote.
All right, sorry, yes, one abstention. Sorry, thank you.
And when you abstain, it is a no vote.
I am aware. Thank you.
All right, we have 4. Everyone else was yes. Okay, thank you. The motion carries.
Okay,
And
thank you very much.
I would ask Ms. Crow, do you think that letter will be prepared Friday in preparation for Monday, or are you preparing that Monday so the board knows when to expect to receive something from us? Oh, and I have to make sure that she can take herself off mute. I think she's having a hard time taking it off. So Mr. Gowan, please be sure she can remove herself off mute. Thank you.
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
When do you think you'll prepare a letter? What is it, Friday or Monday that you're preparing to send that on in so that the board knows when to receive the draft?
I can prepare something tomorrow.
Thank you. And I would ask that Mrs. Crow will work with Mrs. Whiteman, as Ms. Whiteman may have insight into the educational platform in terms of what areas, how some of these bills could really adversely impact public schools. So they'll work together to craft something, and then that will be shared with the board, and based on your feedback, we'll make adjustments and send it in by Monday. With those legislative updates having concluded, thank you, Ms. Crow. Was there anything else from Ms. Crow before she leaves and before we pull up the 2 Code of Ethics items?
Now, just thank you very much for all of your hard work. I appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I enjoy it.
Thank you. With that, under the Code of Ethics items, I believe Mr. Gowan is pulling back up the list. Now, we left it redlined because you gave feedback, and we'll turn it over to our board president and vice president. I believe you went through 1, 2, and 3, and it'll be redlined again, and adjustments made for any future adjustments that are suggested here. And I believe you're going over 4 and 5.
I think so. And I wonder if once I read through it, if and I'm not sure if Ms. Whiteman is prepared, but might be able to sort of just give us a general sense of the intention and sort of the practicality of these, some of these do's and don'ts. Is that possible?
That's Ms. Whiteman. If as Mr. Munoz references suggested ways of best practices in numbers 4 and 5. After he reads 4, if you can share what best practice is or why this particular item is an item of importance, that would be meaningful. And perhaps he'll read through 4 and 5 first and then turn it over to you to speak to those 2. And then we'll open this back up to you, Mr. Munoz. I'll turn it over to you, sir.
Thank you so much. So we'll go one by one. So number 4 on this list here is do insist that the board keep the community informed on the progress and the needs of the district. Don't discuss confidential matters with anyone but the board. Matters discussed in executive session must remain confidential. Ms. Whiteman, I know you've done a lot of training with lots of different boards. I wonder if you might just sort of expound a little bit on why this might be really important for us to sort of adhere to among the other lists of things.
The do part is very important because as elected officials, you are the eyes and ears of the district in the community. So many times community members will come to you as a board member or email you or catch you at a game or catch you at the supermarket, wherever they see. So it's important that you listen and then, basically say, I'm only one board member. I can't promise anything, but I will convey this to the superintendent. And if it's a issue, the superintendent will look into it, investigate, and then report back. So it's important that you always keep the electorate informed of the good things that are going on. Many times as board members, you'll hear and deal with issues that didn't go correctly, but those are generally the exception. We want to be the positive face and image of all the good things that are happening for all the students in the district. The don't is simply do remember, as an elected official, you take an oath to uphold the Constitution and the laws of the state of Kansas and the federal laws. There are over 950 laws Kansas laws that address specifically what boards can do and not do. So you take an oath to follow those laws, but one of the biggest ones is the confidentiality, particularly in executive session of student issues and employee issues. All the employees have confidentiality rights. So please do not talk about employees outside of executive session, nor can we talk about students. Federal law, FERPA, Family Education Rights and Privacy Act, and the Kansas law basically says that we can only release information about individual students or staff members with their permission. They have privacy rights under state and federal law. I always advise my board members, protect your spouse and protect your children. Please do not discuss any confidential information that was discussed in executive session with your spouse or your children because they can't repeat what they don't know. So as a board member, and unfortunately, some people will try to get that information from your spouse or from your children. So protect them and don't share that information outside of executive session. That's the, also because they have privacy rights, if you do that, and let's say an employee or a parent makes the allegation that you have released confidential information about their child, then they can bring a cause of action against you for violation of the law, because the law says boards go into executive session for these reasons, and they all begin with protect the confidentiality of. So be careful about that one.
Okay, thank you so much, Ms. Whiteman. Any questions or thoughts on this particular 4? I know a couple of the others there's some questions, but anything about this number 4? Okay, it doesn't look like it, so we'll go ahead and move on to number 5. Number 5 states, do support and protect school personnel in proper performance of their duties. Don't violate the chain of command or publicly criticize staff members. Send questions and concerns you receive from patrons and parents to the superintendent and or board president so they can ensure the chain of command is being followed and the matter is addressed. Again, Ms. Whiteman.
The same reasoning for number 5 is what I discussed in number 4, is that if you make any statement outside of executive session or even in your private life, and you may have patrons who come to you and give you their opinion of a staff member, you just have to listen and then report any information they give you to the superintendent. Kansas law is very specific that basically says that the superintendent manages the district on a day-to-day basis subject to the rules and regulations of the board. The superintendent evaluates all employees. So any issues related to performance that you hear from your constituents need to be looked into, and the only folks who can do that by statute are the superintendent, and generally the superintendent will contact the principal, ask about situations, and make sure we legally have to make every decision based upon the facts. And many times patrons will only give you one side or one version, and it may be a rumor that's been repeated 10 times. And we've all played the rumor game. Each time it's repeated, it gets enhanced and embellished. So what you hear, we certainly always want to investigate. And if it happened and it's against policy, then the superintendent and principal would have the authority to address the issue issue and report back to the board in executive session. But again, we want to protect their privacy rights as employees and students. We want to make sure if there is a problem that it's addressed, but we always have to make sure that we are basing any decision on the actual facts. And we won't know those facts until there's an investigation, and the board always wants to have both sides of an issue so that you make a fully informed decision, not one based upon rumor.
Thank you so much. Questions or comments about this? Again, we're going point by point through the do's and don'ts. One, to sort of refresh ourselves, and for those of us who are new, to acquaint ourselves with how we should, our code of ethics as board members, and just to make progress on being better and learning. Any other questions or comments about these two? Okay. Wait.
Mr. President.
Ms. Foley, go ahead.
Here. So just to make sure I'm clear on this, sometimes I'll have, patrons say they're in the car waiting too long to pick their child up or drop them off or something like that, is a lot of times at the beginning of the year, and it improves as the year goes on. That's not something I really need to report to the superintendent as a concern, do I?
I hope not. I'll just jump on in there. Please don't tell me if someone is delayed in their car. I would no longer have 300 emails. I have 3,000 a day. But I'll turn it over to our attorney and see what her thoughts are.
You're correct. If it's an isolated incident that happens, and there's always congestion at the beginning of the year as people get used to the routine, and it goes much faster, usually the second and third week. But if you hear, many times it's a matter of volume. If you hear the same complaint from 2 or 3 or 4 different patrons, then those are the ones that need to be reported to the principal or superintendent. Now, the superintendent evaluates and manages the principals. And anything you tell a principal, they generally will let the superintendent know. But yes, they need to be informed, particularly if it's a violation of board policy. There are numerous laws related to harassment, bullying, discrimination. Those are the types that if you hear a complaint and you hear it from numerous people, that needs to be, the superintendent would need to know about that, because she meets with the principals on a regular basis, and if there's a problem or concern, we want to make sure it's addressed and investigated and resolved. So yeah, it's a matter of how many people are saying that. But if it's an isolated situation dealing with the length of the line, or it's a complaint that the students don't like the food in the cafeteria, then you can certainly respond that they try to provide a variety of menus, but we can't legally serve pizza every day. So I hope that answers your question, Ms. Bullock.
Thank you. I'm wondering if we need some verbiage in there about what type of questions need to be sent on, like repeated concerns from patrons and policy concerns need to be reported to the superintendent.
Munoz, Ms. Boley, as you all address these, and it's funny you mentioned parking, because actually, or sitting in the car too long, because Jardine Elementary, when it first opened, and even still now, has some delays. And honestly, it was helpful for myself and Mr. Robbins to get that, as we really kind of looked at how do they pull in, and having Ms. Sharp over there to rethink their drive. So that's a really good one to say, maybe one item, but hearing it 2 or 3 times or multiple people. But if I may suggest, sometimes a concern comes to a particular board member, and it's just one time, and they feel the need to bring it to me. If people could have the autonomy to share with me in the one-on-one meetings what they feel like is worthy to be shared, and not be restricted to having to have had it multiple times, or it's a policy item. If they feel like, hey, lunch is bad at this particular school, and can you look at it? We actually have had that concern and went and did a taste test, I think, or something like that. We did a spot, and it wasn't the lunch was bad, they didn't like what was being served or something, and Mrs. Yankee went and tested the food and tasted it. And so if we could just leave some open autonomy for that, there might be value in board members just speaking to me about whatever they choose to, if that's okay.
Yes, I find that okay.
And I think you're on mute, Mr. Munoz.
Yeah. Any other questions or comments on either this 4 or 5? I think it is hard. I think to trying to figure out what are those issues that I do need to bring up to Dr. Anderson, which are those which may just a bad day for somebody. But I think obviously we do need to respond to everyone and acknowledge what they're feeling.
Can I ask a question, Mr. Munoz? And this
Sure,
is just for my clarity. I think, I don't often, sometimes I get emails, but a lot of times you'll get emails that I won't get. So for example, when you were talking about masks, I didn't get emails. I had 2. But I gather from the last meeting, you may have had more. I'm not sure, but it sounds like you might have had more. And so just for you all to kind of have conversation about, if there's a concern or complaint or something that you're getting multiple times, is that something that as you respond, you send to me, or someone sends something saying, we're getting 5 or 10 of these. We don't want to flood your mailbox, but we just want you to know there's a pattern here of issue. So just giving me clarity about that. And, sometimes previously when there was a complaint, it either would be sent to me, or if someone responded, they would, if the president responded, they might copy me. But if you all can talk about that and decide that process, that would be helpful for me and Mr. Robbins.
Yeah, I mean, what are your thoughts on it? I mean, at this point, I've responded to every email, but if we're getting 100, that can be tough. I do believe it's important for us to respond, and I do. Are you all yourselves responding to these, and how do we communicate?
Yeah, that has been one of the most difficult things for me these past 2 years, is because if somebody emails me, I want to respond as me, but then again, I'm just me, one of 7 people, but I don't want that constituent or patron to feel ignored, but yet we want to have a united voice at the same time.
Yeah, I don't know. And so do you find yourself responding to those emails yourself, or do you?
Yes, I am responding. And if it's something that, sometimes it's just a simple, thank you so much for this correspondence. Please know that you can reach out anytime. We'll have a response for you later on, or something like that. But that's how I respond.
Dr. Schumacher, what?
Yeah, I think it kind of depends, like Dr. Anderson points out, the emails that we had gotten before our last special meeting. And although there was, I think, more volume, it didn't necessarily speak to a specific issue outside of what we were going to talk about on March 3rd. And so, I think acknowledging, as Ms. Stewart Campbell had pointed out, acknowledging and appreciating, because I really did appreciate and do appreciate the input of our students and staff and parents. And I think with something like that, although there's a big volume, I don't know necessarily that moving that up the chain really changes much versus something that is a specific concern about policy or a school or something like that we move to yourself and Dr. Anderson.
I'd love to hear the thoughts on from a couple of others. It seems like there's a distinction between those who are contacting us to let us know about a particular potential vote that we're going to make, right? And those who are contacting us because there's something serious that needs some action, right? That maybe, I don't know, Mr. Schmidt, Mr. Tatum, what are your thoughts on this?
I kind of echo what's been said already. I think it's just a little bit of common sense. I think that the word was out that there was going to be a special meeting, and the CDC guidelines were going to be the topic of that meeting. And the emails that we received from students, staff, parents were just about what their opinion on how we should vote, or what action we should take at that meeting. Then, unfortunately, I haven't received any emails of any other nature at this point, but, something that is a little bit more urgent of nature or would need to be handled by administration, that would definitely not be an email that I'd write back and go, hey, thank you for reaching out. We appreciate it. You can talk to us anytime. Obviously something of that nature would be escalated if everybody wasn't included on it. That's how I've been handling things.
Mr. Tatum, any other thoughts you have? And Dr. Bonebreak as well.
I would also echo the comments that have already been made. I think using common sense, as Ms. Schmidt just mentioned, I think is the key. If someone sends me a email that says, thank you for, this, or thank you for giving us the extra mental health day, we really appreciate that. That's something that's fairly benign, and I did respond to those and said, you're welcome. Thank you for what you do for our students in the district. But when it comes to these other matters, typically, especially Mr. Munoz, if I knew that you were included in the email, I was content to let you as the board president kind of formulate a response if you chose to do that. But a lot of, as already been stated, a lot of the comments that we were getting about the masks were essentially the same issue over and over again, and so I didn't address those at all. I knew that we would be addressing it in the special session. So again, I've been very intentional about differentiating between the different messages that we may get and respond in an appropriate way to each kind.
So, Dr. Anderson, when it comes to an email that needs some sort of urgency and action, I will plan to carbon copy on you on it. I will respond as best as I can, and obviously pivot to have you follow up with them.
Thank you for the clarity.
Okay. So was there anything else? Any other questions about the do's and don'ts? I'm glad we have some clarification. Dr. Anderson, anything else from your part that you see?
No, I was just going to say that concludes our report, and we don't have anything else for you on our end, unless Ms. Whiteman, was there any final comment that you needed to make on any item from this evening related to the board ethics or legislative related matters?
None, Dr. Anderson.
All right, thank you.
Okay, so moving on then to last item on the board, which is board comments. Let's start off with Dr. Bonebreak.
You've heard me comment enough already tonight, but I would like to suggest, since we have $42 million of COVID relief funds, which are supposed to be used to address learning loss over the next year, maybe two, that I don't think we have a direction on how to spend this, where to use it. And I would suggest we have this as an action item next meeting, which will already be a relatively short meeting because we'll be discussing the budget and the audit report. Sorry. But if maybe we could have some ideas from individual board members on what we could do with this windfall and maybe promote something that can perpetuate itself instead of run out in a year and a half or so. Thank you.
Okay. And, before we go any further, I have here on my notes, and I was reminded, I want to take a moment to have a moment of silence for a fifth grader, an awesome student by the name of Terrell Gibbons, who we lost recently, a big part of our Jardine family. And I wanted, before we go any further, take a quick moment and have our thoughts with him and his family. Thank you, everyone. I believe there's some information about his, services. And so if anyone has the time and ability to go, obviously do, if you feel so, go ahead.
Mr. President?
Yes.
Mrs. Boley also lost her sister recently.
That's right. Ms. Boley, on behalf of our board, just please receive our heartfelt condolences. It is a tough time for everybody, and let us know if we can do anything. Thank you, Dr. Bolenbrake. Moving on, this is Walker.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Munoz. And, thinking about the sudden loss of Terrell and how that hit the Jardine community, but also how the TPS community kind of rallied around and will continue to rally around and support that family. I was also, in preparation for tonight, thinking about the incidents at Olathe East. My niece attends Olathe East, and so that was a scary moment for a lot of people, and it makes me value and appreciate the hard work that our school police and the leadership and the guidance that they have, and kind of what they're doing every day. We talked a lot about what's going on not too far from one of our high schools, Topeka High, at our state capitol building. And, when I talk to people, I've talked about this before, why are you doing this? It seems like it's a hard thing to be on the Board of Education. But, my mission is to make our district, to make 501 more successful in serving and supporting students and making our school stronger. And, we have every 2 weeks, I get reminded of the why. Our teachers, Mrs. Mays and her daughter Brenna tonight, our students that continue to excel. And then our programs like we have at Scott that are national award-winning programs. I mean, it's not hard to find the why for me. I think it is harder to find the how. And I think something for us to look at, whether it's at the personnel department or maybe again at the board meeting in this last week, Emporia State University, the KASB, the KNEA, and the United School Administrators of Kansas released the Kansas Teacher Retention Initiative, the report from that initiative. And I think it will behooves us to do a deep dive on that and try to figure out how we can continue to retain high quality staff so that we can continue to serve not only our students and our programs, but also our teachers. But I also think, another how for me as a pediatrician is the advocacy. And I'm excited for us to continue to advocate for our students so that we can continue to support them. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Mr. Tatum.
Thank you, Mr. President. I don't have anything weighty to speak on. I just wanted to wish everyone in the district a great spring break next week. I know my kids are looking forward to it, and I know a lot of others are as well. And of course, with the 2 snow days, they really got an extra couple of days tacked onto their spring break. And I know there's probably not any children that are complaining about that. But just do want to send my well wishes to everyone, and hope you have a great spring break. And don't forget Saturday night when you go to bed to set your clocks 1 hour ahead. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Ms. Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr. President. The first question is really more of a comment. With our agenda this week, we received the updated documentation for the various committees. And so being a new board member, my question kind of is, do we ever do reporting out on these committees? Obviously, we only serve on, 1 or 2 of them, and it would be very interesting to know, what's being discussed in each of these, what decisions they're making, how it might affect some of the things that we're doing in other committees. So I don't know if historically that's ever been a process, or if it hasn't, is it something that maybe we could talk about doing in the future? So that was number 1. And number 2 is I just want to thank the parents and the staff that did email prior to our special board meeting. I speak for myself when I say it was the votes of the people that put me here, and I really look to be the voice for the people who put me here. I'm not coming in with Lisa's personal agenda. So to hear what people want and where they feel about where they're landing on certain subjects or things that we're discussing or things going on in the district, that's very important to me. And I appreciate that they took the time to do that. So thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. And yes, regarding your idea of committee report outs, that's not something that's been done, but I think that's a great idea, and we should definitely discuss it and have it as part of our agenda going forward. Moving forward, let's see, Ms. Stewart Campbell.
Yeah, so thinking about the importance of recruiting and retaining high quality staff. I mean, it's essential for us to be effective in our work as a school district, instructing kids. And that is why it is really important that these bills, some of that Ms. Crow reported to us about tonight, some of these House bills and Senate bills that could be very damaging to public education. And so I'm glad that we decided as a board we're going to move forward with having Ms. Crow and Ms. Whiteman draft some testimony that we have the opportunity to review and then submit as a school board. I think that's really important. And other than that, have a wonderful spring break, everybody. And that's all I got.
All right, thank you so much. Ms. Bowley. Yes.
I was going to say, although it's board comment time, just wanted to mention focus on historically, the old board prior to this current setup would report on committees under board reports. Dr. Morrison mentioned somewhere earlier in the just before he left that the end comments used to be used. That's what he was talking about when he shared, hey, the end comments is for board business and for us to report out on committees and things that we're serving on. And not just your committees, that the 2 that you're on, but like Ms. Foley goes to the ICC committee, or someone may go to some other event. That this end time, and historically, that's part of what that was for, so board members could share what they've done in those committees. My apologies for interrupting, sir.
Oh, that's right. I'm glad that you shared that with us. That sounds like a perfect time for us to share about that, those items going on in our committees. Moving on to Ms. Bowley.
Well, I was going to report out on Sheldon. I'm on their policy committee. And so I will start with that. Sheldon completed their winter. They do a beginning of the year, mid-year, and end of year testing to see how their kids are coming along. And they choose a specific piece from their curriculum guide map. And one of the items that they were testing on was one-to-one correspondence in math. And their goal was to have 90% of their students at or above at the end of the year. And they actually have 92% of their students at mid-year with one-to-one correspondence. So that mid-year scoring was really good. And the other one was letter sounds, and they are on track to make their goal at the end of the year. So that was really good news. They're also beginning to talk about their summer school and who will be teaching at summer school and what their area of instruction will be for summer school. So they're planning on having that. Listening to that at policy committee, I was hoping that since we are starting our fourth quarter, that we might have a report from our leadership team about our summer school this year and what might be occurring there. I'm assuming it will be using ESSER money. So how is that being spent? And because it's almost time to focus there for our summer students and regaining any learning that may have been lost during the COVID period. I also wanted to congratulate all three of our high schools who sent at least one of their teams to state basketball and many of their members in the wrestling. I was at the state in Emporia last night and unfortunately watched two of our teams. They felt like they lost their games. But when I consider all the schools that don't get to go to state, how proud are we that all three of our teams our high schools were represented at state and they had a really good showing. They didn't lose by much. And I think they're all winners just for being able to go. So that was very exciting. Also spent the last weekend in our arts and theater. I went to several of their productions and I must say, it was so exciting to see Topeka High's production with the live orchestra. We actually had 6 of our students in the pit playing with professionals and alumni from Topeka High. And the whole production was exceptional, but it was so nice to see our students step up from our arts programs and music and our directors and our everyone who is educators have put so much into those productions. I believe we had 2 board members have their students involved in these plays as well, Mr. Tatum and your daughter was in one, am I correct? And Miss Stewart Campbell's, and they were wonderful to see. And we will probably see these students' names coming up in their futures as well. Beautiful voices and beautiful acting all in one package. I also want to thank our leadership team for making a decision to not hold school during these storms. We do have students that are walking distances that don't have transportation. And even though it seems like maybe we shouldn't have, or we should have school, we have students that are walking in some of these freezing weather and ice. And so we have to consider all of our students getting our buses out and even parents getting out on the roads. It really makes a difference in our city. So thank you for watching over our students this way. Also, want to thank everybody for the kind notes I received on the loss of my sister. It was just very touching to see my community here in Topeka Public Schools reach out and check on me, and for the beautiful flowers sent by Dr. Anderson. And it's just been very wonderful, and I'm just very grateful, and it's touched my life. So thank you.
I think going last, it's hard because everybody already touches on things that I've had. So what's left on my list is just, congratulations to Miss Mays out of Topeka West and all the great work she's done. And great job to all of those sports teams. You did us proud, and I hope that you all feel proud in terms of your efforts. Last thing, committee reports. On the finance committee, we just reviewed a draft of our audit. So you'll be seeing in 2 weeks a full report of the audit, which is 5 months of work by our finance team, which is, by the way, have done an amazing job getting everything in order. And so you'll see that and get a sense of where we are there for last year. And that's it. That's all for me. We'll go ahead and we'll adjourn and see each other in 2 weeks. Thanks, everybody.